Hello everyone, it's Chris again, and I'm here to show you the progress I've made on my game called Expand. So this week I've got all the basic graphics from the original prototype set up, and I'm no longer using the graphics from Box 2D because most of the collision work is done, so I don't really need to see them anymore. There's just one small caveat, which is if I change the starting angle, so on this side here, and it shrinks or it expands, then what will happen is there'll be a slight distortion in the rest of the sector. And as you may remember from last week, these sectors are made up of several small trapeziums. And when I shrink the starting or the end angle, what happens is this end here actually shrinks or expands only on the one side. And if I'm editing the starting angle, the body will rotate around to work with that. So what you'll see here is a little bit of distortion around this side. Yet when you expand it from the ending angle, this will appear to be stationary, as you can see now. And so I'm just drawing the points from, when I draw the sector, I'm drawing the points that come from the trapeziums, which is a bit lazy, but I just wanted a basic result. I wasn't too fussed about these things. I can touch it up a bit later. But at the moment, the graphics are really probably a placeholder graphics until I think of something that'll really match the visual and gameplay aesthetic that this game offers. The red dot in the center of the screen is a reference point for a camera, which I've created this week. So the camera can shift left, right, up, down. I can zoom in and out, and I can rotate the world as well. And this is pretty neat because now I can set up scenarios in which you can only see half of the world, like so. Now when doing that though, I noticed something which to some people who've done this sort of stuff before might seem a bit obvious, and that is that when you zoom up closer, you appear to move faster. And so if I restricted play to just be in a semicircle like so, then the player will move faster. And I've thought about a way to handle the game to make it not so fast in these situations. And one way to do it would be to change the player's movement speed. And I didn't want to do that. And I thought a much more interesting way to do this would be to actually change the dimensions of the world by shrinking or expanding the inner and outer bodies. So what I'm going to quickly do is just jump back to my code here, which you'll quickly see, and I'm just going to recompile it now. And I've just added some tweening to the internal circle and the external outside circle. And so now the world will shrink and expand. Now, for this example, they're expanding and shrinking at the same rate, but they don't actually have to do that. They can move, one can shrink, one can expand, as long as they don't collapse the space to be nothing. And so yeah, so I thought of a few interesting gameplay situations based upon this expanding and shrinking. So the world can become very thin or very long, and what I can do is, if I want to focus gameplay in only a quadrant or a semicircle, then what I can do is I can change the world space to actually be bigger when I zoom in. And so this means that I will be moving roughly around the same speed that I was moving when I had zoomed all the way out to the normal scale, but I'll be zoomed in at a different angle. This means that I can sort of add more fidelity to the sector that I wouldn't be able to do before because the world was only so big, if that makes sense. Yeah. And so the other thing I worked on this week was scripting. So you might notice, there you go. Sorry, I've noticed one thing is that the sticks sometimes get caught on the side, and you end up drifting along when you're not even touching the stick. That's from a lot of Super Meat Boy, I think. And yeah, so what you'll notice the name here. It says a name. It says Art is Loneliness, and that's because the other thing I worked on this week was integrating the game with Python. Because what I want to do is I want to do Python scripting inside the game, and so I've got a Python script here just called level 1 and has several functions, and these functions are called by the game, and they'll represent different levels. And so at the moment I've only got some very basic functions with only one of them having parameters that don't actually work at the moment loader will be nil or null, or whatever the representation of nothing is in Python. And so what happens is, I can call these functions, I can pull out the return values in C++, and I can use them. And that is half of the problem that you have to work through when trying to integrate Python into a game like this. The other one is that you want Python to be able to communicate back, and not just by returning stuff, but by being able to call functions in C and C++. And so to do that, I'm creating a Python module using something called Swig. So with Swig, I create an interface file. This one's a bit messy at the moment because I'm playing around with lots of things. And so I have this interface file, and what I do is I can include a header. So at the moment I'm just including, well, I'm including something else, but in the final version I would be including, where are we? The level content factory. And so inside the level content factory, I'm just creating sectors for the world. And then what would happen is the game state that the player is playing in would just update all of these, make them move, make them do all this stuff. But through this factory, you can create a sector and then you can apply tweening and animations through it. And the creation process I want to occur through Python. And I can also, through Python, add tweens and stuff like that. And so I can change everything without having to recompile. And I can also add different behavior. So what happens is this interface file here references the header file, and it pulls out all these methods. Well, not quite all of them, but it pulls out the useful ones that I sort of specify. I'm using a really bad style and bad practice here, I suppose, using the if not defined and defined to work this. But I'm looking for another way at the moment. So what happens is all these functions and all these data types can be called inside of Python, and they'll create I can compile this code into a Python module, and then I can tinker around with that via the command line. Now there are lots of problems here because what happens is hooking up Python with C++ essentially boils down to converting Python types into C++ types and C++ types to Python types, because you have different representations of types in different languages. And so at the moment, I'm just trying to convert my types and my methods and stuff into methods that can be called via Python. And there are a few little intricacies there on different platforms as well, and a few things I've got to nut out. But I've got the basic stuff working at the moment, and I just need to flesh out this stuff and fix up a few smaller issues, and then I can start creating scripts and content for the game much faster than I could create it before, and make it a little bit more dynamic with Python, hopefully. Well, I suppose less dynamic because I would have restrictions on what I can do inside of Python, and anything I want to add, any features, I'd have to program them in, but ultimately the process of creation is going to be much faster. And I get to use Python. Python's cool. And so that's what I've been working on this week. Next week I'm hoping to continue with the integration with Python into the game. I also should probably work on determining when the player is squashed, and then from there I'll have a basic system where I can start creating real simple levels and I can give them to people and prototype. So yeah, that concludes everything for this week. Thank you.